Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hello, Kate and guest.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Kate and I are super excited to talk today with Chen Chan, who is one of our friends, one of our colleagues, one of our previous coworkers. And really, honestly, it's been a while since I've had a chance to talk to you. I was going to say in person, but at least be able to see your beautiful face. Exactly. So hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here and share any insights and help in any way that I can.
Yes, absolutely. So Kate and I have worked with Chen when he has been the leading design teams, doing really amazing creative work, and it's taken him all over the globe now, right? We worked with you in Boston. You were in San Francisco for a while. Are you in Amsterdam now, or have you made the Berlin move?
Copenhagen, right?
So I'm in Copenhagen now, and then we'll be moving to Berlin in May.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Is it for work or is it?
Yes, everything has been work related. So, when I was in San Francisco, I was out there working for Pottery Barn. When I was in Boston, I was working with you guys at Smarter Travel / TripAdvisor, and then went into Wayfair. And then Vivino, the wine app company, brought me to Copenhagen to lead their creative team here. And then I'm going to be moving back into the travel space for a Berlin opportunity. Yeah.
So exciting.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I think it can be so inspiring to hear where your creative career can take you if you lean into it, if you seize the opportunities that are out there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's always been really great because, always having worked Nikki and Kate, closely with the two of you at Trip, that was sort of like one of my introductions in, working with content and copy. And I've, really kept that by my side. And at Wayfair, I was able to actually lead the content team as well. So they reported into my creative structure. Mm-hmm. And then I sort of brought those positive learnings to every other company that I've been in since.
So you talked about you've been talking about the kind of the interplay between copy and design. And you've moved into managing both copy and designers in various points in your career. How has that been different for you from managing designers, or how has it been similar?
Well, okay, so copy is not my craft. So what I do is I hire very capable managers, right? And I always make sure that even though I love copy, like I took a lot of writing courses in college, but they were all long form and creative. Mm-hmm. But I always see, I also think that reporting is sometimes just a formality. It's just a structure. Because a lot of my managers I see as my partners. I see them as peers. I don't see them as direct reports. I almost never even use that term, direct reports. I'm always like my team or whatnot. Mm-hmm. And what I found is, and also I want to encourage copywriters that, as I was looking for this content strategist, this global director of content strategy at Vivino, I saw so many impressive resumes where people started as copywriters and then either became content strategists or became creative directors. You don't have to be a designer to become a creative director. You can be a copywriter and become a creative director. So they're really interchangeable. Mm-hmm. And those were the profiles that really intrigued me. Like I wanted to hire managers that had been in the trenches so they understand what needs to be done and the type of writing that needs to be done and how effective and how efficient should their team members be. Mm-hmm. What's also, I think, worth to mention, and I'm just sort of reviewing some of my notes, is, and Nikki, you kind of called this out where, there's this sort of collaboration that takes place. Sometimes it's led by designers, and sometimes it should be led by copywriters. Mm-hmm. And especially in the internet, sometimes, designers are basically like, you have 2 lines to write your copy. But sometimes it is the marketing side that actually has to create the medium of the message that they need to tell someone at a specific touch point.
Mm-hmm.
And we literally just had this argument with our product team and the CEO, where the CEO was like, product, you guys are building the plumbing, and you're basically telling the marketing team where to put their copy. They need to choose their medium. Is it going to be a cartoon strip? Is it going to be a movie? Is it going to be a book? Like right now, you're telling them you want to test a book versus a cartoon strip versus a film, but you can't really test those things. Like you need the marketing team to dictate the message and
Mm-hmm.
what is it contextually.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to let them lead this. And this is not a product. Even though we're a product-driven company, this particular feature should not be product-led. And so I wanted to call that out because, like, I think many copywriters, I've met a lot of copywriters that are introverts, and they're not always sort of like vocal to voice their opinion, and they should be, because even though they are often forgotten, unfortunately, they are such a integral and important part in a successful user journey.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, and I think to your point, there are a lot of more introverted writers, or just I think that sometimes the idea of, well, making a suggestion to a designer or saying, no, this has to be this way, or this, can we explore how this should be this way? I think that sometimes people think of it as quote unquote sticking up for themselves or inserting themselves. And I would advise people to reframe it as, you're not asserting yourself, you're asserting the project. You're trying to do you're not speaking up for the sake of, I want to be heard. You're speaking up for the sake of creating the best possible project. And the way that the designer is going to come into a project with their particular viewpoint, and a writer is going to come into a project with their particular viewpoint. Mm-hmm. And it's that interplay of those two viewpoints that comes up with the best work. So if one of them in the team, either one, isn't speaking up and saying, hey, you know what if we did this instead, then you're not going to end up with the best possible results.
Absolutely. And for those listeners that cannot see this video call, I'm nodding in agreement, like profusely with everything that Nikki just said.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I'm curious, you mentioned, creative directors that are copywriters. And I think for copywriters that are listening to this, maybe just starting out, but that might be the direction they want to go. What are some of the qualities you see in a creative director, I guess either designer or copywriter, but particularly copywriter creative directors, that you think are critical to them being successful in that role?
You've got to be an amazing storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when I say that, I mean, people have to realize that every conversation they have is an interview, whether it be with your partner's parents, whether it be at a restaurant, whether it be, like when you ask a waiter, what's the special today? They could read something off and you're like, it's okay. But when they can actually sort of like, when they know it and they describe it and they make
mm-hmm.
eye contact, it's a different experience, right? And so everything to me is a storyteller. And, when we were looking for these global directors of content strategy roles, like I would chat with my CMO, who's an amazing lady. And we basically test a lot of our applicants about how are they going to tell us their story in 7 minutes? And it's like, you need to be able to sell yourself. And so you really need to be able to talk about yourself, talk about the product. Like you really need to study the product so that when you are in an interview and they say, what do you think our brand voice is today? Where would you like to take it? You need to be ready. You need to really understand the difference between like transactional / promotional language versus inspirational language versus functional language, mm-hmm. especially if you want to make it into the digital sphere. And if you don't know the difference, look it up. But it's really, really important that you know what tone to use at what point of the journey, and who is your audience. Mm-hmm. And so you really, and that's why even at Wayfair, you know, I was overseeing sort of like our print catalogs, our direct mailers, our emails, our UX copy, and it's so different, right? But you need a different style for each of those mediums, and so you need to really understand you really need to understand the medium. And like I said, everything is contextual. You really need to understand the context of it as well. So hopefully that answered your question, Kate.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I think that's a great point about functional versus brand copy, right? I think I want to say it was a story about eBay way back in the day, and they were still figuring out what their brand voice was. And because I think originally it was a lot like funkier and I don't know, funky and funny. And they carried it through to I think it was eBay, maybe it wasn't, but they carried it through to their checkout pages. And it was like all cute copy, like, hey, put those credit deets here, or something like that. And obviously not that exact, and they were like, why aren't people purchasing? And so somebody said, all right, well, let's do a test and let's dial it back and let's take that brand copy on the checkout page and let's make it functional. And of course they did that, and the test obviously won like crazy, because on it when you're putting your credit card numbers into a page, you don't want this like, and especially too, because that was back at the beginning of e-com.
Is this real?
Yeah, exactly. Is this a real thing? So I think that's a really great point, and especially too, like that's a point in the process, not to go too far on this, but that's a point in the process where you want it to be fast. You don't want to have to like figure out what they're asking for here.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really great distinction. It all needs to fall under the greater brand voice. Yeah. But yeah, there may need to be different styles, often need to be different styles depending on the medium. Yeah.
You know, like we're in the middle of an initiative about platform messaging, because a lot of people at Vivino don't know that we sell wine. They just think that we're a utility app. Yeah. So people think that you can just scan wine,
right? And
then someone tells you the review and whatever. So we have to sort of break the flow a little bit. And we're trying, and this is where, you know, this year was like, marketing needs to really dictate the storytelling, because we don't want to tell you about buying if you're already on a product detail page, or if you're already on a PDP. There's no reason for us to be like, hey, and we can sell you. You know, it's like that would not make sense at all. Mm-hmm. And product wasn't really thinking about that. Mm-hmm. And so to your just to sort of like add on to what you just said, Nikki, it's really like really understanding where you are in the funnel progression, what the context is, where they are, what medium are they using, and what have they seen before this? Mm-hmm. Did they get an email? Because if you are coming from a banner ad, you don't want to be redundant and say the same thing on the landing page. Yeah. Like you want to give new information or additional information that the user doesn't know about yet.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I want to underscore that, because I think so many copywriters get a creative brief or do the creative brief and just write to whatever they're doing, and they don't think about where are they going next. Is that copy been written? What's on that? What's that experience like? Where did they come from? What was that copy? What was that like? And where does this fit into the whole?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's amazing how often you come up with something that they clearly did not. They have no idea where you are in the customer journey, and they're like, okay, now buy.
Yeah, but I feel like that is a mistake they'll only make once.
Yeah,
because when you ask the question like, okay, where did they come from and where are they going? And when they say, I don't know, and you look at them and be like, like they're like, okay, got it.
Back to your desk and come back with a better answer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and there's one thing that, not to belabor the point too much about creative directors, but if this is in someone's mind, and also too, everybody's going to work with creative directors. So it's something good to know. I think sometimes too, copywriters think, oh, well, being creative director would be amazing, but does that mean I also then have to learn how to design? And I don't know if designers ever think that same way, but yeah, it's about creative direction. So you can be a designer. You don't have to know how to write copy. You need to know what's wrong and be able to tell them what's wrong so they can fix it. And the same thing with a copywriter who's become a director. They don't need to know how to design. They need to know this is wrong. Go fix it.
Yeah. I think those are the best traits to have, Nikki. And those also don't have to be from creative. Like your best product partners should know how to talk to creative. And so, you see all these memes about PM standing behind like designers' backs or copywriters' backs saying, make that bigger, say this.
And it's memes or lived experiences?
Or both, right? Yeah, they're both. They're memes because they're true.
Yeah.
But it's really about, and we've actually at some of my companies, we actually create PDFs of like how to communicate with creative. And instead of saying things like make that bigger, it's like, what's missing here? Like, do you think the message is getting lost? So we could either use stronger language or we could add line height. It doesn't need, like, the creative doesn't mean it has to be bigger. And if people say, I don't like this, we also try to shift it to be like, maybe you should say things like, I don't think this will resonate with the user, because you always want to be putting you want to be user-centric, you want to be consumer-centric, and you want to remove any subjective feedback and prescriptive feedback. And so, like, to that point, Nikki, as well, like, copywriters need to know how to give that kind of feedback to designers, and designers need to know how to give that type of feedback to copywriters or content, right? Sometimes I get really frustrated with the word copywriter because it's so much more than that. Like, I feel like copywriter sometimes sells the job a little short. So yeah, like learning how to give good feedback is also super, super important, especially if you want to move into that creative director role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's fantastic. This has been so terrific. I know that I'm buzzing, and I know our listeners and our students are going to be inspired, and there's a lot of takeaways and a lot of things that they can do to improve themselves and follow in your footsteps in a lot of ways. So
maybe not in all, not all, but in some.
I don't know. There's some very exciting
to follow in your footsteps.
I've been party to that, maybe slightly different than copy and design, but
that'll be another
footsteps.
podcast. Yeah, yes. A different podcast.
Exactly.
All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much for having me. And it was so wonderful to catch up with you ladies and see your pretty faces and really see everyone doing great.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah. Thank you. And then, of course, thank you to everybody who is listening, watching, following along, and we will catch you in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're ready to take the first step toward becoming a copywriter yourself, sign up for a free video training right here.